Hello guys, this is the second episode of The External View.
I'm Ray.
I'm Konstantinos.
I'm a random Irishman they kidnapped, and I'm here now.
And we have a special guest today, our first ever guest. Really excited.
Hi, I'm Nathan. It's good to be here. I love the podcast, the first episode. I'm just happy to be here.
Thank you, man. Really appreciate that. Thank you. I've actually created an email. If anyone would like to suggest any new topic ideas, anything they would like to hear on the podcast, or have any other views they want to be heard, or want to even come onto the show, the email is the.externalview@gmail.com. Please reach out. So we've heard many great things about the podcast, especially the fact that they love the ideas that we've been having and everything about what we're doing. And so today we're going to look at religion and our views upon religion and what we believe in as God, and if we believe whether or not he's real. Let's start off the podcast by hearing about Nathan's religion. Now, Nathan, please explore your religion. Please explain your religion, sorry.
I'm a Buddhist, which means I believe in reincarnation and karma and the Four Noble Truths. And the Buddha, as he's described in Buddhism, obviously. The Buddha, if you don't know who that is, was an ancient Indian prince, who lived a very coddled life, and he never saw any woes or anything about the world. Got that out. Leave.
Okay, I'm going to keep this in. For context.
For context, we've been doing this for
I'm
5
missing
minutes.
everything else out.
Allow.
For context, there was a joke that Cons had, but okay.
I'll stay here, I'll listen from here.
By the way, we're not disrespecting.
No, we're not being disrespectful.
Okay, we're not disrespecting Buddhism.
We've just been doing this for 5 takes.
Okay.
5 takes now.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Please, I'm actually really interested, Nathan. Please tell me more about Buddhism and the gods specifically.
Oh yeah, since we're on the topic of gods, it's complicated because we do believe in so we believe in Earth as Earth as we know it, like the world. But we also believe there's hells and there's also heavens, and in heavens there lives devas, we call them. It's a Sanskrit word for God, but it's used in a different context than you would in Christianity. It's not an all-powerful God like in Christianity. It's more like more powerful beings who live longer and have more wealthy lives, you could call them. And we believe they do exist. It's just, and you can be reincarnated into them. We don't believe they're all powerful and determinants of morality and things like that.
So is it about multiple figures that are righteous in a sense, or?
Yes, you could say that. There are different gods across the world because it's often throughout Buddhism's history, the way it's spread is that it has kind of interlaced with local areas, folk religions. Mm-hmm. Japan, it fuses with Shintoism, and in China with local Chinese gods. And so they are normally recognized by people around there, but for Buddhists in other countries, maybe not so much, you could say.
Oh, okay.
I want to say something. I really respect the fact that you know a lot about this, because
thank you.
a lot of people who are religious don't know even the tiniest percentage about their religion.
They don't know their history and maybe the good and the bad.
Yeah.
Because I'm gonna be clear here. I don't think Buddhism is a totally benevolent force throughout history. It's been used as a justification for some bad stuff now and in the past. I'm not going to pretend that doesn't happen.
Your family aren't Buddhist, right?
No, my mum is an Anglican Protestant Christian, Church of England. My dad's an atheist.
Okay, that interests me because a lot of people just follow what their parents do and then blindly just go into a religion which they don't know much about. But you specifically developed the understanding for Buddhism, and then so that's what I want to look at. That's what I want to believe in, right?
Yeah.
I respect that.
So you looked at other religions beforehand as well?
Yeah. I was interested in Christianity, the history of that.
Yeah.
And my dad, he's a strange guy. I'm gonna be honest. He is a strange guy. He's got a bunch of occult books, things.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm not surprised your dad's a strange guy.
Yeah, different philosophy.
No offense.
Yeah, different philosophy books, things like that. So and he would often give me them because I was also kind of interested in that, because a cult, that's kind of cool. kind of mysterious,
Fair
kind of
enough.
interesting, and that just kind of like exposed me to other religions, and it like kind of taught me to explore more.
Yeah.
So what led you on the path of like searching for a religion?
I don't know. I just kind of felt like that life. It's just kind of boring. There wasn't like any reason to keep going. Things like that. It's kind of like I was apathetic.
Right. So you thought that without a religion to follow, that you didn't really have I don't know, a purpose in a sense, or
Not sure it'd be that far. It's just like it would help.
oh okay.
Irishman.
I was just gonna say, like, what was it for you that Buddhism interested you in? Like, what was that? Why were you? What was it for you where you're just like, this is like what I believe in like a way, you know?
I think it was just kind of the foundations. It wasn't like, you know, often you see people like they're interested in the art, like the stories, the folklore, things like that, the rituals. For me, it was like the foundations it's built on, like the fundamental, like this is what we believe, and this is an expansion upon that, which is that reality that is inherent, the thing that is inherent to that is suffering, not like constant torture suffering in a sense, but like there are bad things in the world. The establishment that like the attachment is that like attachment to material goods, things like that, and the way to get out of that is kind of relinquish those, so like you kind of live a more simple life, things like that.
Wasn't I'm not sure if I'm right on this, but I'm pretty sure wasn't like the original Buddha. He was like a prince, and then like he wandered the streets and saw death and decay, and then he just like was like, I don't want any more belongings.
Yeah.
And then left his family.
Yeah, that's what happened, and he became a what is called an ascetic, which means like depriving yourselves of things, basically constant fasting, like only meditating, can't eat most foods, things like that. There are some religions that are still like that, and I'm not saying that to disrespect them or anything. It's just like wasn't seen as the right path. But before that, obviously, he'd lived a life of wealth, so he'd seen the two extremes, and he left both. And the story is that he was meditating under a tree for days, basically, until only eating the food that would fall into his lap, and that's when he realized like the middle path, like you can't do too much of anything, you have to go straight through.
Wait, one thing. If you're meditating under a tree and then you're stopping to eat, isn't he then breaking the meditation? Because then he's not really meditating for 3 days.
No, I think it's like it's not in like the sense. Yeah, you could kind of say that, but like he was like constantly meditating, pretty much like non-stop.
It was like there was besides eating, meditation, probably sleep was the only activity he performed.
Yeah.
So is it kind of like this to appreciate like the simplest things in life?
Yeah, basically. Compassion is a big thing.
Yeah, sorry.
Actually, that's a good point, because there are like three main schools: Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana. Mahayana. I'm sorry, and Vajrayana. Vajrayana is the kind you'd probably think of. It's the Tibetan Buddhism, the kind you think of the Dalai Lama, things like that. Theravada is the kind in India. It's very only what the Buddha taught, no further revelations, you could call them. And Mahayana is the kind that you often see in China, Japan, places like that.
All right.
Yeah.
And that's big ethos is compassion towards other beings.
All right. Yeah. Thank you. I think now we should move on to the main part of today's podcast.
That is to argue the existence of God, right? Not any specific religion.
Just in general, is there like a greater being who probably like created Earth or like the universe?
Yeah.
In itself?
Well, that's an interesting point,
Yeah.
because to discuss whether God exists, we first have to define what God is. Of God throughout the world.
Yeah, exactly. Because different people have different ideas of God, and
I can
what
answer.
God is also depends on like your experience and like your culture, obviously.
No,
right?
I can answer the Google version of what they say God is. I googled it.
You googled it.
Yeah,
Google knows everything.
No,
Let's be honest.
You should have asked ChatGPT.
Shut up.
Yeah.
What
No,
do you think?
no,
What's the definition
What's
of
God think of it?
No, I was interested what like the internet says, right?
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, context of the viewers. I am an atheist. We have obviously Nathan's a Buddhist. Con.
I'm Orthodox Christian.
And the Irishman is an atheist,
Okay.
despite being Irish.
Bloody hell. Okay.
Grandparents aren't happy with that one.
Yeah. No. So, according to Google, the definition of God is a creator and is the ruler of the universe and a supreme being.
Mhm.
So obviously that meaning that he created everything that we are seeing.
Okay, so we're going off
Mm.
that,
Living,
that
yeah.
kind of
So
definition.
Yeah.
that he
The
created
creator of
everything.
everything.
That's what the
So
meaning
the-
of
the
a God
creator.
is.
Because I
Yeah.
think that's interesting because
There are different definitions.
Yeah. one I've been thinking about lately was there's this philosopher Spinoza.
Mhm.
He came up with like an idea of like the term used is you've got atheism, theism. He said pantheism, which is God is everything, as in like nature. Nature is God, and that I thought that was a very interesting idea. I'm not sure I subscribe to it, but it's an interesting alternative explanation for God. And obviously, in pagan days, there'd be like just immortal beings who are like very good at a specific domain, you could say.
So I want to actually discuss an idea which I found last night on a TV show,
Yep.
which I forgot the name of the show, but it was a late night host. So Ricky Gervais, he was on the show and he was discussing his whole opinion on religion. And one of the things he said, which actually made me think a lot, is the fact that we are all agnostic people. Meaning, agnostic is people that don't have a specific understanding of whether or not God is real or not. So, Ricky Gervais, he said that he believes everyone's agnostic because we don't really, whether or not you're a Christian or this or that, it's only a belief system. You only believe in God's real. You never spoken to him. You never gave him a phone call. Like, yo, what's up, God? Help me with my exams. You're
Yeah.
sitting down praying
Yeah.
to this, what Google says, supreme being
Mhm.
to help you.
Well, then there's an argument of how do you know if you're talking to God or not? Because there are people who have made claims that like, God spoke to me, he
yeah,
gave me guidance.
Yeah.
So is it how do you not know, or how do you know that it is God?
And
Okay.
also,
Because
like,
some people, they've said, "Oh, God spoke to me," or "I've seen God in my dreams."
I'll give you something really simplistic right now.
Yeah.
If I sit down, if I'm at home and I don't study, and I was back in GCSEs, and I have a GCSE test tomorrow, let's say chemistry. I don't revise it because I hate chemistry.
Mhm.
But I sit down, instead of revising, the periodic table, all the other topics that come up, I sit down and pray to God and say, please help me understand all these topics, please help me do well, please help me get this grade 9 that I really want, to get into school I want.
Mhm.
You're not going to get the grade 9 if you haven't put any work into it. Realistically, you can't sit down and say, God is going to help me.
But that's going off the topic a little bit because
It's
we're
not.
talking about
no, because
the
what you could say
existence, right?
it's like just because there's a God doesn't mean he's going to answer to your needs.
Yeah,
That
that
is
is
like-
a good that's a
point.
good
You can bring up like
argument.
the argument. You can pray to God, but like there's no like 100% sure way you're going to know he's actually hearing what you're saying.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
I thought he's all-knowing, all-hearing.
Yeah, but just because like you, I don't know how to like.
But isn't
Just
it-
because he's omnipotent doesn't mean he always uses his
Yeah.
power.
But isn't he meant to be, he loves us all? If he loves us all, why wouldn't he want to help us all?
Yeah, but people will see God.
No,
in different
but
ways.
you can't question what God does and doesn't.
I can
because
question
he's
what God does.
omnipotent, because if he's the creator, right, and he basically like planned everything out, right, you can't really question whether God does something or doesn't. And like, I don't know how to argue this properly, but God knows what to do and what not to do, right? And you can't really sit there and question what he does and does not do.
I can question him right now. No, listen to me, yeah. Turkey, right now. I've been reading the news recently, especially with the earthquakes happening in Turkey. Over 47,000 people have died. These are innocent people. Okay, maybe there might be some criminals. Maybe like a couple hundred people, criminals in a prison might have died. The rest of them are most likely innocent people, especially children, you know. And in my opinion, you know, a God, a supreme being that allows, you know, 47,000 people, innocent people to die, especially children, you know, that leaves grieving parents and people suffering, you know. That to me is just a God that's like, it's either he's unable to help, and obviously the idea of him being a creator, being the supreme being, if he can't help them, he's not a God, right? He's either not able to help or he doesn't care to, and that means he doesn't love us, and which he creates us. Why wouldn't he love us? The idea of a God is that he loves us. So that doesn't make sense to me. Please explain that.
I think like what you need to do is like because what you're doing is you're putting like the accountability of just God by himself. But I think what you need to do is like look at like science we have and like also look at God at the same time.
Okay, let's look at the science.
Like,
well, hold on. Let's look at the science of an earthquake. Let's look at the science of an earthquake, right? That's two tectonic plates that slipped.
Yeah.
You know, and they've caused an earthquake. That's science. That's fact. You think if a God, part of God's plan, he caused those tectonic plates to slip. That in my mind is evil.
Yeah, but
that's an evil.
Okay,
that's an evil God.
yeah, but see, the thing is, our definition of God right now is the highest being, omnipotent, right? And that being does everything planned, right? You are not as omnipotent, are not as you're not to the highest form like that being, right? So you can't really understand why and how that being works and why it does things that we can't really explain. So you're arguing that because death exists and plague exists and evil things exist in the world, right? You're arguing that because of those things happening, God can't really exist because God is all loving and helping, right? But if you're not to that level, like omnipotent and understanding and all-knowing, right? How can you possibly understand and question why those things happen?
Look,
yeah.
I think that's an interesting thing because you brought up the earthquakes and you brought up how can you know what God thinks. And I think that was an interesting thing because
wait, just before I forget, talking about the earthquakes in Turkey, I am looking to start a charity with another friend. Con can join. To help fund and a charity to help with the Turkey situation, and we're also looking at other social events that's happened. But yeah, if anyone would like to donate, please you can email the external view. Yeah. Sorry, Nathan. Please.
I think it's you brought up the earthquakes, but I think another bigger tragedy that was more relevant, at least. Okay, let me talk about the philosophy of atheism rather than like the religious side, you know, or the philosophical arguments. A big thing, like there were two major things I think you could say. It was like the rise of science in the 19th century, you know, like evolution, all of those things. And also it was the Holocaust because, well, existentialism as a philosophy, it really arose in the 40s, 50s, post-war period, especially in like Europe, which had been ravaged by World War II, you know, the Holocaust. And people began to ask themselves, if life has meaning, why did this be allowed to happen, you know? How could there be a God? And like men like Albert Camus, women like Simone de Beauvoir, Jean-Paul Sartre, those people, they questioned that and they came to the conclusion that there is no meaning, there is no inherent morals, and there is no God, and life is what you make it. And I think that's kind of an extrapolation from a man called, two men. Friedrich Nietzsche, you may know him for God is dead and we have killed him, if you know that quote. It's a very famous quote. And what he was saying is that through this birth of science and the new Enlightenment, rationale, that religion is kind of dead. The old way of living, old meanings of lives, they aren't existent, and only like humans can kind of find their own meaning and to escape from nihilism. Life has no meaning. And there was another man who I think is more relevant to your point that we can't know God, is Søren Kierkegaard. He was a Danish philosopher, and he thought that there should be leaps of faith, if you will, because this is kind of complicated.
Don't make it too complicated.
No, I'll try and explain it. So he believed that there is a kind of anguish in life when you don't follow what God intends for you to do, and then the way you believe in God is simply you just take a leap of faith, because what else are you going to do? Leap of faith. That's the only thing you can do in face of this anguish. You just kind of have to believe, because what else do you have?
Yeah.
I want to bring up, I mean, you mentioned the Holocaust, right? If you're a Jew, I don't get why Jews still believe in their religion. You know, hundreds of thousands of millions of people died during the Holocaust. If a God existed, why? No. If a God existed, why is he letting all these Jews die? I mean, you put your belief in a God, and he's just killed you, basically.
What it is, like, I think if you look at, like, nature and stuff, I think if you start to understand, like, this God that exists, he lets animals kill other animals. He lets, like, disease, like, kill stuff. I think you can understand it more evenly if you think about, because, like, how most religions think, that I understand, is that, like, God's so, like, at the top of what God loves most is humans. But I think if, on, like, a more moral perspective, I think what it is like, he wants all of nature to thrive. So, like, there's no, like, bias.
I think I'm not Jewish. My family aren't Jewish, but from the Jewish people I've spoken to, I have spoken to some Jewish people I know about that, because it is a very good question. I think some sort of see it as kind of a test, if you will, and that's the thing in, like, other forms like Christianity and Islam. They believe that, like, suffering on earth, that's God testing you to make sure you make the right choices. And I think they believe that people who have been killed in the Holocaust, they go to heaven, of course, because they didn't do anything wrong. They were slaughtered, basically.
Yeah, because I've been listening to what all of you guys have been saying, yeah. Basically, because you brought up the Holocaust, right?
Well, Nathan did, but yes.
Right, Nathan brought up the Holocaust, right? So, God, right, he loves us a lot, right? That's
Supposedly,
supposedly, right? God gave us free will, yeah? He loves us so much, and therefore he gave us free will, yeah? Animals don't have free will, right? They instinctively do things, right? But God loves us so much that he gave us free will. Now, what humans do with that free will, yeah, is not... it's not
It's
part
not what
of God. It's not what God wants for us. He loves us, and he gave us free will, right? So let's say, for example, a figure like Hitler doing creating the Holocaust, right? That is not what God wants for us, but he loves us so much that he gave us free will to be able to do whatever we want, right? And also, because you were talking about morals, right, as well, even if you don't believe that God exists, right, we have like a moral compass in us, right? Because, like, whatever we do, we want to make other people, like, feel good in a sense. Like, if we see someone in danger or depressed or anything like that, we want to help them out, right? Not only because we want to help that person out, but because it makes us feel good as well, right? So doing those things, right, we're one step on the ladder of reaching good, right? What is God? God is the highest good, right? And whenever we do a good action, right, we strive to reach that highest good, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I love the fact that you brought up animals, because I have a good point about animals.
Yep.
I actually took a picture from an article I was reading, and it's direct quotation from the Bible. So It's on the 9th chapter of Genesis. It's Genesis
9:3 to
Verse.
6, verse 3 to 6.
verse. So it's the part where God tells Noah about it's just talking about the events of the Great Flood, right?
Yeah.
So the quote is, "Every moving thing that liveth through be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things, but flesh with the life thereof, which is the blood therefore, shall ye not eat." Okay, that's in my opinion, and it does also continue to say in the article that it's exploring the idea that God doesn't want us to eat meat. Flesh is not a form of food for us. We are all eating animals, right? Obviously, you have the vegetarians, the vegans out there, the pescatarians, all the other Aryans, right? But we are all eating meat. Especially a lot of religious people eat meat, you know. And my point on religion is that, like, part of the 10 Commandments is do not kill, isn't it? But you're killing
Yeah.
animals.
Yeah.
There was like one of the stories from the Bible where I'm pretty sure they cut the throats of sheep so to put it around their doors, the blood around their doors to protect them.
I'm not sure. I think
Can't remember
I'm
the
not
story
sure.
precisely, but he says
No,
you-
but I think in this specific context,
this is
you're-
from the Bible,
Yeah,
by the
yeah.
way.
This from the Bible. You're speaking about Christianity specifically, right?
Well, yes,
Um,
but this is a following of God,
Yeah. Right. Okay.
of
yeah.
Jesus. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I think sometimes in the Bible, people tend to take certain things out of context, and you have to know the context beforehand.
I gave you context. He's talking about the events of the Great Flood.
Yeah, but I mean,
where
what
Noah
happened-
has all these
Yeah.
he has, what was it, 2 of each animal on his boat?
Yeah.
Yeah? And then God has directly said as a message, you shall not eat flesh. Wait, Nathan, what was you?
I think it's an interesting point because it is kind of ambiguously worded. Can you?
Yeah,
on the phone? So I
it's
can- so I-
it's because it's old sort of English,
Yeah,
right? It's not
so let me read this again. Every moving thing that liveth shall be meat for you, even as the green herb have I given you all things. Now that would imply to me, from that sentence alone, that, well, animals are free game.
Wait, do you do higher English?
Yeah.
This explains a lot.
That sounds a lot to me that you can eat whatever you
Yeah.
want.
Yeah.
But-
That's
yeah.
what it sounds like to me.
Okay,
But-
but let him continue.
But flesh with the life thereof, so kind of saying life,
Humans.
humans, effectively, which is the blood thereof, shall ye not eat. So I think that to me suggests, obviously, no cannibalism. I think
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
obvious.
that's the obvious. But
That's the obvious. But I
flesh
think,
of life of, that's also animals live.
No, but
No,
in the
the flesh
Bible, you
there-
have to consider as well that humans are regarded in
As
a
like the
higher
superior
power
being.
over animals.
I don't think.
as a
I mean,
superior-
yes, obviously.
I
but
think that's-
animals,
Because animals
if you,
don't
if you
have-
look on a scientific basis, the animals
Yeah.
live. They have all the similar,
No.
especially
Yeah,
But
but
the
you gotta
thing
think at the
between
they have
time.
all
Think
no,
at the
but
time.
the
similar
thing
organs to
between
us.
us and animals is that animals don't have consciousness. They don't have
Sentience.
like they just have instincts, and it's really like
There was
as if it's hard coded to them. It's not like us where we can think about our thoughts, right?
Okay, well, what about monkeys and gorillas? They have human characteristics. They actually have a brain. They can actually.
But it
Most
doesn't
animals
mean
have
that
a
they're
brain.
conscious though. It doesn't mean that they can
They
think
understand
about
what they're
their
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's genetically like coded into
Yeah.
their heads.
I think-
what they're
Exactly,
doing.
and that an animal and they live.
I think something we've touched upon here is the debate of is free will a thing? Because I think there's an argument. Well, I believe in free will, but I think there's an argument
I
for.
think everyone believes in free will.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Well,
Yeah,
actually, no.
most people-
Actually, there's a thing, there's a view called determinism that believes there isn't free will. That it exists in some forms of Christianity.
Oh, the fact that we don't have free
Yeah,
will.
there's God's plan or whatever.
Yeah, no, actually,
but-
I can expand on that.
But the kind I want to talk about is the idea that, well, we don't really have the freedom to make certain choices because the conditions you live in, those determine the way you live. Like, say for example, you're a starving mother with 2 children, you're homeless, you don't have any money. Now, free will would say, oh, you can do all these different things. Determinism would say you're kind of stuck into like
You can never get out of being.
you're kind of stuck into some certain choices purely out of circumstance. And I think that's an interesting thing for this discussion because it's questioning, do we have free will, or do we not really have much of a choice? Because that is also a debate in religions as well, because there's
Yeah.
God's plan, but there's also free will.
It depends what you define
As
free
free
will
will.
to be, because like in that situation when you mentioned, there
It's
is
obviously an extreme example,
yeah,
but,
but
that those normally work best.
yeah, but the the mother would still have free will over her actions. It's not
Yeah.
like she's like forced to do certain things. She still has her own mind and can do things like, I don't know, walking or things like that.
And it's
or,
like also kind of like how you see free will, because you could think
Yeah.
of free will as like just control over your actions,
Mhm.
like that's your you'll have freedom over what you can do, or you could literally think of it as like you have freedom to do whatever you want, which is like there's a complete. They both could be seen as free will, but
Yeah.
they're both completely different meanings.
things, yeah.
I want to go off on a tiny bit of a tangent from free will, right? So I want to look at what we perceive as like what religion really is, because my opinion, I've spoken about this with different people in school. My opinion on religion is all a system of control, right? And my point is that everything we do in life has to do with the religion. We go to a court of law, they ask you to put your hand on the Bible, whatever religion, maybe the Quran, you put your hand, and you swear by the Bible, the Quran, your Jewish scriptures that you will not lie, right? It's all about belief, you know. Everything you do, do not kill, do not steal, all that is all in the 10 Commandments of religion. Right? Everything we do and say is based on religion. You know, I can swear to God that I'm not lying to you right now, but I could lie. I could make a complete lie and say I swear to God, and you most likely believe me because I'm swearing to the higher power. And that's what's the word that where you're disgracing God's name?
Saying in vain. Or is
But
it?
like blasphemy.
Blasphemy.
blasphemy,
I'm committing blasphemy, and it's not obviously that's a sin, right? You're not allowed to lie. It's one of the 10 Commandments, right?
I think that's an interesting point, because obviously we've established I have a religion. I agree with you. I fully agree with you.
Thank you.
Now,
Someone who's religious.
Let me elaborate on that,
Thank
because that
you.
might seem confusing. You believe religion is a form of control, but you're religious. Let me explain. I think that religion is not inherently the organized form of it. Christianity was not originally the Vatican, the Pope, all of that. It wasn't originally. If you look through history, it was often like just small house churches. And I don't think those forms of control, because they are control, they determine how you live. They like kind of force you into certain ways, especially throughout history, medieval period, especially. If you know anything about it, you know that the church controlled everything.
And divine right. Of
Yeah,
king.
divine right of kings. So I think I don't think those are inherent to religion. But also, I do believe in some senses, they can be constructed, because let's say, for example, like Abrahamic religions, you're not really supposed to eat pork. You're not really supposed to, you veil. They're considered dirty animals. I think that's like a health thing, because in that area, at least, there's like a large amount of parasites, things like that.
So you don't think it was God that told them that? It was.
Well, that's just because I don't believe in Christianity, but I think.
No, but isn't that Islam? Christianity also don't believe in.
No, yeah, Christianity as
Judaism,
well.
Islam.
Oh, so then every Christian, I swear, every Christian I know eats pork.
No,
so
no,
therefore they're committing.
I think that's kind of. I think that's kind of.
Well, that's what
I was talking
Nathan's
about.
saying it's a Christian thing.
It's an Abrahamic thing, you could say, and I think it's like. It's that, but it's also just a health thing as well. Like, veiling protects you from the sun, so you don't like get sunstroke and things like that.
I wanna.
So it's kind of both.
I
And
want to make a brief point about veils, right? We were doing our English presentations the other day, and there was a girl on her presentation actually discussing different type of veils. And in Afghanistan, there's the type of veil where they literally cover everything. All you can see is their eyes. And my point is that if God gives us all these body features, especially women, they give them all these like, facial features, body features, and then it's to the Quran, you are not allowed to show them. You're not allowed to show like a bump of your body, but you have to wear a veil that covers it all. You can't show them your hair because it's sexually attractive to men. But that's something that I think someone's created, made up just to create more control, and that also links to a lack of freedom, which you were discussing earlier. I don't think there's a lot of freedom with religion, but then that also ties into the ethics of religion, right? Is it wrong to have these? Because like obviously, that religions help to stop murderers and everything.
Alright, no. Let me talk. I mean, it's gonna continue on about control on religion, but I'm gonna look at the morals of it because I'm thinking of medieval England right now. It's they use the idea of Christianity or Protestant church to keep this society civilized, you know? Because I feel like there's the fear of the fear of the unknown. If you don't know why you're here and what created you, then people are probably gonna freak out and there's gonna be chaos on the streets and stuff. But if you give people the idea of this higher being, and then give morals to it, then it's gonna give them something to hope for and believe in. It's also another way of using religion is the king, for example, the divine right of kings. If you give them a symbol to look towards, it's gonna make everything just more civilized, isn't it? And people aren't gonna question existence.
I'd like to bring up how religion, but also atheism, both have been used as forms of control historically. Now, hear me out. Let's take the example of the First Nations Native American people. Now, obviously, it was the way they're a cultural genocide, you could call it, was done out of seeing their religion as savagery, but it was done through that, but it was also done through Christianity as well. And I think founding a society on either founding society on anti-theism as well as theism doesn't benefit anyone. So I think
to that point,
a foundation of a society on agnosticism.
Yeah. Can I just say something? Yeah, basically,
Colin, you know it's your podcast. You can say
yeah. No, obviously. But it's you guys are talking about how you're basically saying that if God didn't exist, that would lead to people doing whatever they want and killing others.
No, I think now that wouldn't happen because but I think the reason why it would happen back then is because as science evolves, we get a better understanding of everything.
Yeah.
And I think that back then, when there's very little understanding of what's right, what you're supposed to do, stuff like that. If there's no religion which gives you a set of morals which you're going to believe in, then it's just free game.
Yeah,
I think as over time, where even as religions faded out, the morals have stayed, even though a lot less people are religious now.
It's firmly ingrained.
Yeah, wait, I just want to elaborate.
I
just want to elaborate on Con's idea, right? With the whether or not I believe if religion, if ethics would be like that, without the idea of God. I honestly, in my opinion, I don't think it's God that holds people accountable. It's the idea of religion and the belief in God. Because obviously, like I said, I don't believe in God, right? God is more like the glue that holds the
a conception.
Yeah.
Rather than a physical thing,
an idea.
tangible.
Because it's like it keeps people accountable. It's an idea that they're going to go to hell.
Yeah.
And the idea of hell, I mean, it's torturous torment of place. You know, if God, so loves us, why is he sending us to this punishable, eternal place of fire where you'll eternally just suffer?
Yeah.
Now, come on.
Yeah, basically, I want to argue that even if there wasn't a God, right? My previous point about morals, we still have. I feel like even if there wasn't a God, we would still feel obliged to do good, right, for others and ourselves. Basically, with the Bible, with your example, right, the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments are basically what, don't lie, don't kill, right? Which are obviously obviously you should not do those things, right? If you want to be morally good. And I feel like people, even if they didn't believe in God, they would still abide to those rules. And because they want to satisfy themselves through doing good deeds, right? And doing good deeds, they also fulfill like a sort of higher good, right? There's this higher good that they aim to be, right? They aim to get to. And that higher good, you could say that is God. So even if God doesn't, even if some people don't believe in God, right? You could say that they still have a moral compass within them that leads them to still do good deeds. And that's what God is in one sense. I'm not saying in all of the senses, because there are different meanings for God, right? Which is the highest good, right? The highest conceivable good.
I think that's an interesting point because earlier I mentioned existentialism. They saw that that you make your own meaning, you have found your own morals, and I think that's interesting because you say that like there's kind of an inherent good in people.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with that. I think I do agree with you, but like I think there's kind of a current of thought that that's not necessarily the case.
Not with some people. There are cases where
Some people
want
are just
to,
evil.
Yeah.
There are evil
cannibals.
people, right?
I
They
mean, like,
want to do
people like
bad
Jeffrey
thing.
Dahmer and
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
people.
Yeah.
No, but like, it's the most
Hitler.
one of the most
Hitler.
recent
Obviously.
shows I've
Jimmy
watched.
Savile, Jeffrey Epstein.
Just like unambiguous
Genghis
evil.
Khan.
But that's
The
because
list goes
God
on.
gave them free will to do what they want, which
But,
is
like,
why
I think
they're
it's
able
just,
to
like,
do
there's
evil
too much of a
deeds.
pattern though, because like in a lot of like almost every major religion has some
Yeah.
form of punishment after death. Because like the Greeks have like Hades, which is just hell.
Yeah.
But that's all.
That's
not like the
ancient,
Norwegians, wasn't it? It's also called hell, isn't it? in
No, but
Norway?
you describing that pattern.
Or is
No,
it-
wait, hold on. You describing that pattern is just proving my idea that,
Yeah,
it's, that it's just not real.
Yeah, that's what
No,
I'm saying.
but
That's what I'm
If
saying.
every
No, Maya.
if every form of religion has
Do you-
this idea that you have to have a form of evil to control people, to
Do
tell
you-
them
that's
what
what I'm
they, it
saying.
doesn't exist.
Do you not think that these ancient texts are all derived from a single source? They just have different opinions. So, in my opinion, I believe that like God exists, but it's also dependent on your view what God is. Like God can be anything that you want God to be, in a sense. If you believe God is the highest good, then that's God for you, even if you don't inherently believe in God, right?
No. That can't be God can't just be whatever you think God is. If it's like let's just put the
Why
idea.
not?
No, let's just put the idea the idea of God into Jesus.
Yeah.
If I want Jesus to be a goat, not as in greatest of all time, as in the actual animal goat.
Yeah.
Well, Christians would agree he is the God.
He is the
Okay,
goat.
let's change it now.
No,
okay,
but if he
no,
wanted-
hold
Free
on.
my man.
If I want Jesus to be a lion, right? The idea of Jesus to being
No,
a
but
lion.
with
he
that
will-
argument-
he,
with
he
that
can't.
argument,
He,
yeah.
I can't just say he's a
No,
lion
but-
because he's not.
No,
he's
but with-
physically
with-
meant to be the son of God. But there's no way.
No, but specifically with Jesus, it said that he can't do what's out of his jurisdiction. One thing to so it is said in the Bible that God can't do certain things. He can't lie, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, in the Bible it says that God can't lie because he's the highest good, right?
But have you ever heard him talk to you? So
so-
how can he lie if he can't speak?
Yeah.
No, but the Bible has recorded history.
Yeah, but how
and
can you?
No,
but
Bi-
think of the highest good, right? If it's the highest good, lying is what? Lying is a bad thing,
Bad
right?
thing, yeah.
So
But it
if
can also be a
we're
good
thinking of the highest good, right? No, lying is
How big of a sin is lying in Christianity?
lying is quite. I mean, I don't know if you can like measure sins in a sense. But
No, like,
No,
this
because
is
lying
like,
is quite a
have
big sin.
I have a close friend. This person will know who he is. He's not in the room right now. He will know who he is if he listens. He told me he's a good Catholic boy,
Yeah.
but he lies all the bloody time.
But this is like where like religion falls apart. It's just like it says some things, but like they just contradict each other. Because like for example, lying being a horrible thing, sometimes it's the right choice to like lie. You know? Because like if you get what I mean.
I get you
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Which like
the right
makes
choice.
it fall apart.
Yeah,
'Cause, like,
but
that
lying
means that
does
God
what?
has no
Lying
morals.
prevents the inevitable, right? if you lie to someone about a bad event that happened, you're gonna have to tell them anyways at some point.
Yeah, at some
Yeah?
point.
So I feel like that doesn't matter. You choosing when to lie and when not to lie, it does not really change the fact that lying is a bad thing. Like foundationally.
Okay, so before we sum up the podcast, I want to mention one final point.
Yeah.
Let's put the idea of God again into something else. Let's put the idea of God as your parents. Because he is the father, right? He's meant to be the father.
Yeah.
He's our father,
Yeah.
right? The idea of God, being your father, your parents, if you do something bad, will punish you maybe. It depends on your parenting style. But a traditional pair of parents will punish you maybe, I don't know, like...
The belt, the slipper.
It depends on the culture.
Yeah,
Depends on the
but
culture.
they will punish you
The
if you do
song.
something like that. If I robbed a shop and my parents found out, they will discipline me. But they won't. But your parents love you. They're not gonna want you to suffer in an eternal flame of hell.
Yeah.
Right. So, if God is our Father, our Creator, why would He want us to? If we commit a sin, He would want us. He would punish us. Yes, maybe by punishing us, like by, I don't know, not letting you get that job interview that you really wanted.
This is
you know?
getting very specific.
Yeah.
But see, like,
No,
you're
it's
still
not specific
thinking
to me.
about it in terms of, I think, Christianity. What we're talking about
It's religion as a
is God as an existence. Like, does God exist or does not
It's-
exist? Why do you think that, though? Like, we've
Because, like,
we've
I
argued,
don't see it
right?
as
We've
like
argued,
feasibly
right?
possible for someone to create
You know,
everything.
But
So
listen,
like create physics itself. And
everything
stuff like
has a
that.
cause, right? Everything
Yeah.
has a cause, right?
We just But
So
there's
your
some things
action,
you can't explain.
No, but your action, has a cause, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you go back through, I don't know how many number of causes, right? You're gonna arrive at an original cause, right? Our conception of God is a person that is omnipotent. They can do anything they want, right?
Yeah.
If-
no.
If they can do anything they want, right, then they can also be the first cause. So with that also comes don't you think it's like a massive coincidence that the universe was created the way it is, with Earth being created the way it is, and natural things being the way they being created the way they are, with even maths like connecting to natural things, right? How is something so intricately impossible? How is this something so intricately impossible not created by something?
okay. I think we should sum it up for today. I think we've had an interesting view. Thank you, Nathan, for coming on the podcast
Thank you.
today.
Thank you for having
That
me.
was an interesting episode.
Yeah.
I
you for
really
having
would
me.
like to elaborate on this. Maybe
Yeah.
next
Maybe a
week
part two.
with with another special guest. I have someone I think some people will be very excited about coming on next week. We're not going to tell you now. You'll find out next
It's a
week.
mystery.
a
Obviously,
mystery.
they're going to kidnap me in central London and drag me down here again because I'm the Irishman. Like, say, like, in
Impossible.
10 seconds, like, we're like, you haven't really put into the accountability. Maybe, like, because we, like, don't have a full on understanding of all of science.
Yeah.
There's always the possibility that there was never a beginning, it's just always happened. Because, like, there's the idea of time. Time is a thing, but it's, like, something we made. So it's like, it could have just
Conception,
been, it could have just always been there.
Yeah. By the way,
therefore
this
there
is
wouldn't be a
just
God.
this is just a friendly discussion. We're just
Yeah, we're not
discussing,
saying
we're
you
not
should.
forcing any ideas.
We're not saying you
on
should
anyone,
stop being
like,
Christian or stop being your religion.
You guys have your own.
I am
opinions.
saying that, by the way.
That's
Stop
his
being
opinion.
stop being
That's
religious.
No,
That's his
not the point of
opinion.
the podcast.
I'm kidding.
No, but so you guys, whatever you took away from this episode, you can just have a think for yourself as well. What you think. You don't have to side with a specific person.
Alright. Thank you everyone for listening today, and we'll see you next week. This is The External View.